Hey lovelies, we're excited to be here today to share and review our experience of playing through the first zone of Linked Worlds. We'll be breaking down this game zone by zone as the developer mentioned that some people struggled with things like the first boss, so I figure it might be helpful to share how we went about tackling each zone and boss. I want to state that I have not asked the devs for tips specifically so I can experience it from a new player's perspective with no prior knowledge of it. I also want to state that this game is not out yet, but it does come out in a week on March 29th, so if you're watching this after that date, then it's out. I'd like to point out that this is a single dev game, and while it draws inspiration from larger titles, let's be kind and remember that single dev teams are not going to have the resources an entire franchise has, so please form your opinions accordingly. It does boast between 8 and 12 hours of content depending on how much you explore, and that's massive for an indie title, so huge win there. Now, I want to say first that this game was not what I expected it to be. I've played so many pixel games lately that are in the form of Stardew Valley in some way that I sort of forgot that other versions of pixel games exist. So when the dev came to me stating it draws inspiration from classic titles like Chocobo's Dungeon and Final Fantasy Tactics, I really had no idea what that meant. I love pixel games, however I've never played any real strategy games. I've grown up in a community full of people that adore them, I've just never done much more than watch, so please know that I'm coming from a completely fresh point of view to the genre. With all that being said, let's jump in. Upon the initial entry to the game, you're greeted by a few story cutscenes and tutorial segments that definitely go a long way in helping you understand what to do. I tend to be the person that skips through stuff sometimes and ends up not knowing how to do something, but as I'm brand new to the genre, I decided it best to read what they had to say, and it definitely helped. I will say you probably shouldn't skip the tutorials. This game isn't your traditional throw it all in your face and tell you how to do it right at the start, and it was actually a pleasant change from what I'm used to. The game is listed as an indie RPG strategy game, and that is exactly what it is. The moment you're released into the world, you quickly realize that your lowly slimes aren't so lowly. If you don't have a plan of attack and some sort of strategy towards walking through particular paths in the zone, then you'll absolutely be playing Gray Screen Simulator, and not just once, but multiple times. I'm going to say it was actually frustrating for me to experience a game that was genuinely challenging right off the bat. Games these days handhold you through the first zone and don't get to the harder content until much later on usually, unless you're masochistic enough to turn up the difficulty right off the get-go, but I'm not that person. However, Linked Worlds was honestly an amazing change of pace. After dying several times to slimes, I realized that this game was not just any old pixel farming game and that I could not hack and slash then roll and dodge my way out of a slime's attack. No, quite the contrary. I needed a plan. So, after waking up in town for the 4th time, I set out to take the game more seriously and try my best to whack down the evil slime that stood between me and Town 2. I'm not ashamed to say, I fished up a dozen potions and spent a few minutes buffing up my level by defeating the slimes along the paths a few times, and with a comfy level 10 and my skills chosen specifically for combat and an inventory full of potions, I set out to take on the big boss slime once more and didn't have high hopes. I figured someone as new as myself would need to spend a few more attempts tinkering with settings until I learned what I needed to do. You know, the traditional whack your face against it until you learn the pattern strategy. You can't imagine my surprise when I found myself taking it down the first try after beefing up. And it was actually stressfully fun. It's a turn-based attack system, so you get time to plan what you're doing. But with every attack I made, I grew more on the edge of my seat about whether I was going to take down this boss. I was overly excited for such a simple game, and to me, that's what made the experience the most sweet. So when evil boss Ooze fell to the ground in defeat, I felt such a sense of accomplishment that it was all the reward I needed. I strutted into Town 2, ready to tell the world that I was the boss now. Honestly, not many games have given me this sense of accomplishment recently, and I will say that I enjoyed it enough to keep going with it, and in a genre I've never experienced, I consider that to be a win. I say the game is difficult, but it's not some crazy game that you're going to beat your face against with anger. I want to compliment a few things in the game. First, the time system is different, but I love it. Time progresses via your steps, so if you wander around too much, the time of day will change quite quickly. Also, the game doesn't force you to go to sleep at a certain time. Rather, once you're out of stamina, or potions and health, you'll need to rest in order to ensure you'll be successful at combat again. One thing I discovered is that you can actually fish endlessly. Sure, it takes 5 minutes of game time, but I see no reason why you can't sit there for days on end fishing up potions, gold, and rusty items to sell at the shop. It's also just a chance game, so there's no real monitoring it or playing a repetitive minigame. It's literally my dream fishing experience. Press one button over and over and flood your inventory with stuff. All jokes aside, I enjoyed the fishing. It made me feel like I didn't have to spend all my coins to buy potions. I could simply spend a little time gathering resources from the river and move forward with a bit more confidence and a sack full of stuff. The last thing I want to mention is the skill system. I love the fact that you can freely change up your skills in order to create a few different playstyles as well as attack and defense combos. I consider this ideal because with so many different people preferring different things, games need to be flexible enough to allow that or risk being too niche to truly succeed. That's it for Linked Worlds for now, but I want to give a huge thanks to the dev for trusting us with it. They've been a pleasure to work with and have already taken some critical feedback from us. This seems like your type of game. Definitely consider wishlisting it on Steam and purchasing when it comes out to support them. If you're still a bit unsure, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you can keep up with our progress and opinions on the game before making a final decision. See you guys next time.